Bruchim habayim, welcome everyone to another edition of our Hilchot Shabbat. We're starting Siman Resh Nun Gimal, one of the most powerful and important, relevant Simanim in Hilchot Shabbat, and Daf Chaf Amud Aleph of the regular prince of Mishna Berura. And we need a preface for this, which we're going to do in just a moment. The halachot of Shehiyah v'Chazara. What can you have on a stovetop going into Shabbat? What can you take and put back on a stove, if you or crock pot or blech or hot plate? All of those are questions that has to be asked and answered. What is considered a normal way of cooking? What is considered not normal? Can you use a regular flame on Shabbat to heat up something that was already cooked, or do you need a blech? Can you use a hot plate without any cover on it? Do you have to cover and line with thin foil your crock pot? Do you have to elevate the level of the crock pot? All of those things are going to be dealt with in this Siman. So hence it's important. If you have an uncooked food, the cholent that I just want to put minutes before Shabbat on stovetop, can I do that? How about if it's half cooked? How about if it's cooked but it's going to become much better? These are all questions that we have to deal with, and that's exactly what we're going to be doing. So it says the Mishna Berura. We're going to start, instead of with Shulchan Aruch, here with Mishna Berura, because he has about some 20-30 lines of preface, which we're going to methodically learn together and go through. מפני שהסימן הזה רבו פירותיו וכדי שלא יבלבל עיני הקורא בו. I don't want you to get confused, says the Chafetz Chaim, when going through סימן רש נ"ג. אמרתי להעתיק מספר מחצית השקל פתיחה קטנה אליה. I'm going to share a little preface from Sefer Machzit HaShekel that enhances your understanding of the basics in this Siman. This way you could just read it quickly and understand every detail that is mentioned. You should know. There are two different concepts that Maran and Rema over here are going to relate to, and they are different than one another, but both of them are very much similar, and they share certain principles, and they certainly overlap in certain cases. Shehiyah means exactly what it translates as, that you are leaving something on stove from before Shabbat going into Shabbat. Ve'chazara, and Chazara means also what it exactly translates, means returning. That means when you left it from Erev Shabbat on top of the stove, and on Shabbat you are taking it off, and now you want to return it again to the source of heat. This, in parentheses, he says, this is the main issue of Chazara. But there's another concept, there's another inyan of Chazara as well, that you could take it, you will take it before sundown on Friday afternoon, and you want to now return it back. As we're going to see this in Seif bit. Now, the Gemara part of this is a machloket between Chananya and Rabbanan. Chananya holds the imtafshil kvar nitbashel k'machal ben derusai, that if the food is already half cooked, or let's say it more accurately, cooked enough that you could eat it when need be. Right? It's nechal al yedei hadachak. That, it's not fully edible, but it is edible if need be. If push comes to shove, you could eat it. If it's Ben Derosai was a thief, right? He was always on the run, so he never fully cooked. Everything was rare. The food was rare. It never was well done, just put the kebab there, put the steak there, rare, eat it and run, right? He never stayed in the same place for too long, and therefore never had a properly cooked meat. So that's machal. Became what zchut he had that he became so famous. He's probably the most famous thief of all time. But that's machal ben derusai, machloket rishonim, if it's 1/3 cooked or half cooked. But the concept is that it is edible, but hardly edible, right? So Chafetz Chaim says hu kachatzi bishul. It's like half cooked, right? And he puts in parentheses that those who say 1/3. Mutar la'ashota al gabe kira. Hanania holds you could leave this from before Shabbat, going into Shabbat, on top of your stovetop. Afilu im ena gerufa min gechalim. Even if you did not clean out the gechalim, did not clean out the coals, still you could use it. Now there are two ways to clean out the coals to make it okay. One is gerufa, which we mentioned. You sweep out the entire heat source. You take all the coals, all the hot coals out, sweep them out. Or you could do ktuma. You could spread ashes or sand, whatever, on the coals. This way, you first of all reduce the level of the heat, and secondly, you are also making a heker, making a reminder for yourself that this is going to be not something that you tamper with on Shabbat. Unless, of course, it's fully cooked and further cook is not good for it, then you don't necessarily need it to be a garuf v'katum. You don't need it to be covered like that. Uberesh perakiratenan. And in the beginning of the parak in the Gemara, we learned kirashi isikua v'chulem begefet ubetzim lo yitenat shigrof. If you want to put a pot on the stove, on the tanur, which has been lit with regular fuel, you can't put it on unless you take the coals out or you cover the source of fire, and then you could put it. Now, it says the Gemara, when you say lo yiten, when you say don't put it, what does it mean exactly? Does it mean you can't leave it from before Shabbat? Unless you take the coals out and you cover them, or does it mean lo yiten that you can't return it if you took them off? But you could leave from before Shabbat, even on open fire, on coals without taking them out or without covering them. And says the Gemara, it's not clear in the Gemara what the answer is. It was not answered properly. The Rif and the Rambam and those other Rishonim who follow their Shita, they hold that it is for leaving it from before Shabbat, right? And it comes to like the Rabbanan of Hanania, that even if you want to leave it on a stovetop, on open fire on Shabbat, going into Shabbat from Friday, you need to have a blech, you need to cover it, or you need to take the heat source out, all the coals out. And the Tosafot paskin not like Rambam and the Rif. They say that you could be more lenient, that for shehiyah, if you're leaving it on the source heat from before Shabbat going into Shabbat, it's mutar even without a cover. But when you want to take it off and then return it, then you need to have cover. These are the two opinions that are going to be discussed in Shulchan Aruch, in this Siman. The first Shita is the Rambam, and the Yesh Omrim is going to be the Shita of Rashi and Tosafot, as we mentioned before. So this is the basic elements that we're going to be discussing in this Siman. And with that, we could basically understand what goes on in the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch is going to bring both of these opinions. Is going to paskin, of course, like the Rambam, but then we will have to deal with the Ramah as well, which again makes things a little bit more complicated dealing with the second shita, which is something that we're going to deal with Be'ezrat Hashem in the upcoming days. We're going to have a shorter shiur today because of the event, but Be'ezrat Hashem will continue this in the days to come. Chazak u'Baruch.